I'm Ron Reader, and this is Ron Reader Digs the Universe. And today I will be digging superheroes, vigilantes, and cops. Back in the mid-2000s, I had a conversation with an LSU political science grad student. We were talking about American support for the Iraq War, which we both opposed. We talked about oil, we talked about the military-industrial complex, we talked about Fox News. The guy was, of course, very knowledgeable. He was, after all, a grad student. I asked him what he thought, what kind of role did the endless consumption, American consumption of war movies play in support for the Iraq War? And he just went, thought for a second, and he was just like, well, I've never considered entertainment media before. Now, at the time, I was a bit surprised. I mean, after all, this was this guy's beat, political science. But, in hindsight, I shouldn't have been surprised. Entertainment is a blind spot shared by most Americans when they contemplate the way the world works. My academic background is in theater and mass media. It's, at the University of Texas they call radio, television, and film. It's mass media, whatever. And these are the intellectual lenses, theater and mass media, through which I dig the universe. You see, theater taught me to understand the creation and consideration of meaning in the arts, and studying mass media taught me to understand the creation and consideration of meaning in the popular culture. Now, a notable misconception about arts and culture in this country, generally the wealthy white men who own and operate the nation, view arts and culture as maybe something nice, but, unless it's making money, totally irrelevant, and their sycophants and underlings embrace their masters' attitudes, and thus that is the dominant opinion of the establishment. That's their way of thinking about the arts and culture in the United States. But that is tragically misguided. The arts and culture, particularly stories and narratives, deeply affect how people think in a sort of under the radar way. Indeed, according to cognitive psychologist Jerome Bruner and many others at this particular point, stories are one of the main ways that human beings organize and understand reality. And we humans sort of intuitively get that. That's why we study the Greco-Roman myths, why we study the Bible, why we study great literature. These are the great stories, that society understands to be the great stories that tell us who we are, so we study them in school. But those are just the stories we study in school. There are lots of other stories out there that tell us about who we are. What are some of those stories? We consume mass media every day in this country. Some of us consume, 4, 5, even 6 hours worth of the stuff. Now, if you take an overhead bird's eye view of what is on this media menu that people consume, it becomes pretty obvious that there are a lot of cop and police stories. Now, I'm not simply talking about movies and TV drama. I'm also talking about news product narrative and reality shows. Hey, but wait, don't touch that dial. Why don't we throw in war movies? Why don't we throw in superhero movies, action adventure movies, badass loner dude movies, and all their various marketing tie-in products? And you have established hardcore a modern myth about the guy who uses force to get shit done. So, to step back a bit, when we study policing and the police in the United States, we need to take this big, huge modern myth into account, the myth of the guy who uses force to get shit done, because it's underlying everything, whether we realize it or not, this cherished value of Americans. Now, let's take this a step further. That myth, then, is the overall context in which we must consider the myths and narratives that the police embrace about their role in society. What are the stories that they tell, that they consume? What are the stories they embrace that tell them about who they are? Well, frankly, I haven't a clue, but I know a few things that could lead a little bit of speculation. For instance, I know that cops consume the same media entertainment products that we consume, so that's there, that myth. I know that cops think they're the good guys. I know that cops are probably idealists, at first anyway. I know that aptitude tests weed out anti-authoritarians and critical thinkers. I know that academy training teaches lots and lots of techniques of physical force. Now, all of these things together that we all know about cops, that sort of manifests as an organizational subculture, and I deeply wonder how that organizational subculture, with its own, myths and narratives and stories, how does that interact with the general culture? And the more I speculate about it, the more disturbing it is. I mean, there's a lot of cops into the freaking Punisher now, who is not a hero. The Punisher is a freaking psycho, They get, these fucking Punisher stickers. I don't get it. It's disturbing. And I'm not gonna go any further into that speculation today. Let's look at something bright. I am very glad to hear about Minneapolis dismantling its police department and starting over, moving away from the force get shit done myth. I am very glad to hear about the movement to defund the police, which as far as I can tell is basically the same thing that they're doing in Minneapolis. These people get it, Unfortunately, the only people doing it are in Minneapolis. And I read an article about Camden, New Jersey today. They've been experimenting with this for a while too. So, Minneapolis, Camden, New Jersey, they're the only ones doing it. And we need to do it all around the country. We need to up the social services, make life just easier to exist for people in high crime areas while reimagining the police as peacemakers instead of peace enforcers. More generally, we need new myths, We need new myths about community, myths about people working together, stories about heroes who build instead of destroy, heroes who use their minds and backs instead of their fists and guns. You know, we need a bunch of new stories. But who's going to write them? Probably not Hollywood. Not yet. I'm Ron Reader, and this has been Ron Reader Digs the Universe. Join me, Ron Reader, again next week for another episode of Ron Reader Digs the Universe.